Practitioners and aficionados, welcome back to this thing of ours in another episode of the Chronicles of Gameology. I'm your host, Neil K. Marcellus, and yeah, that's a checkmate. To start off, first and foremost, the comprehension of this streetcraft, this game, does not move forward in head of complexity, it follows it. Bearing what I just said in mind, then it is a necessity for a man to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary can blossom and flourish. And since I'm speaking of what is unnecessary, let's begin with none other than this zombie-like psychosis that this image is showcasing. The batting average on this piece of work is outstanding regarding how it is swept over and rendered sightless many a man and their common sense, blindfolding them to what is plainly obvious and bluntly apparent. This klutz and clumsy-inducing lunacy have knocked it out the ballpark on making damn sure that the men who fall up under this infliction is depraved of their scruples and better judgment, stifling their level-headedness to a point where it is nearly non-operative and non-functional, to put it mildly. This happens to a large degree for the simple fact that a lot of men have problems wrapping their heads around the complexities of life and what they're socially mentally consume, mainly this reality depriving dogma, which falls up under the catch-all phrase referred to as prosperity gospel. Now, this type of propaganda is encased into a vulgar and cliche type information that is repeatedly pushed around the societal zeitgeist. You know the ones like the keep your chin up, and here's another one: keep your eyes on the prize. And let's dare not forget this one: keep your feet on the ground and your head in the clouds. And as the title and the thumbnail communicates and points to, and this is the fact that a lot of men have become casualties and poison pawns of females like this one that's being portrayed on this image. So in order not to find oneself in this position, this requires a man to be properly laced up on the ability to stand back and peep game, which is considered being street smart, or better yet, using critical thinking skills. Then this way he is well studied enough to diminish any possibilities of him becoming a poster child that will label him a chump. Having this type of firm footing affords him the insight to keep a cautionary eye and lookout, where he can quickly recognize and extinguish any recruitment attempts intending on making him a card-carrying member of this zombie coalition. Women like these that's in this image are known to fake the funk and sip from the same batch of Kool-Aid that they push to others, evidenced by how women like these are consistently in prop-up mode, expanding gobs of energy, keeping their head fictitiously held high. Remember, a large portion of women who exhibit mannerisms just like what I just got through describing is most likely trying to escape and grab some fresh air from the full-on assault and awful aroma being inflicted upon their own damn nostrils, coming from the offensive odor of their own damn bullshit. You see, this message that advocates that you should always be looking up, this name it and just claim it bullshit, this prosperity gospel, a woman can use this as a back door to launch a campaign to domesticate and put the whammy on a man and his common sense, especially when he hasn't been read in on how the complexities of life truly works and how to navigate the compadres of complexities, which is dilemmas and catch-22s he would find himself in, which happens as a natural byproduct of interacting with women in general. And as all seasoned practitioners of this street craft have an in-depth understanding of, and that is, females are indoctrinated a certain way, starting from an early age by the status quo, that equips women to somewhat know instinctively how to quarterback and set into motion this zombie-like psychosis by applying an old but tried and true compliance technique ripped right from the pages of the shystyism playbook. But this compliance technique, this whammy, acts like some kind of ransomware, implanting a sentiment within a man's psyche where he would just comply and be overly eager to just acquiesce. And so as a defense mechanism, a man would then develop a scab over this repeated mental wound, whereby the unwritten playbook and tutelage within this street philosophy has dubbed this as a man having a just let it die mentality. Mind you, this just let it die mentality, which is brought on when a man undergoes a consistent drum beat of this whammy that is drilled into his eardrum on a consistent basis, and also him being clueless on how to navigate the multiple dilemmas he was consistently run into, the complexities of life. But this just let it die mentality is made possible when a shysty female who knows how to use a certain amount of arm twisting and then reward administers these precise tactics that I just got to explaining, which places her into the driver's seat so she can reap the benefits. The thing is, this whammy, this compliance technique, if truth be told, it's a method of applying low intensity pressure. And couple this with a lot of men who are game goofy on staring, dodging, and bypassing the multiple dilemmas that will ambush a man as he moves across this chessboard we call life, then it's a foregone conclusion that this low intensity pressure chisels the exact doppelganger that the woman who uses it craves and yearns for. Now, this whammy, this compliance technique has some help and some muscle to back it up, which within this street philosophy is called a force multiplier. This hinges on how efficient a shysty female has become at working angles and prioritizing what gets put on the back burner versus what gets put on the front burner. And here momentarily I'm going to show how this concept, this force multiplier right here, works in a man's favor, but only if he has gone through the right development and has a thorough understanding on how dilemmas contribute to his success or his failure. Anytime you allow someone else to prioritize what will be placed on the back burner versus what will be placed on the front, this changes you for the better and for the worse. And like I just said, this is a force multiplier when it comes to this street philosophy. Now, remember a few moments ago, I said that this vital concept, this force multiplier that's being shown at this moment, I mentioned that I will divulge how this concept of prioritizing what gets first dibs on being placed on the back burner versus the front burner can be used to its fullest by a man, but only if he has gone through a certain type of development and evolution. Also, this was answer why this zombie-like psychosis, this name it and just claim it bullshit, this prosperity gospel is so prevalent at seducing a man out of his common sense and better judgment. With taking all what I just said into account, just sit back and reshuffle your attention while I put you up on game. Now, those of you who are frequent viewers of the Chronicles of Gameology already know I use the principles which is embedded into the ancient cosmology known as the game of chess to spotlight and to demonstrate how they can be applied and utilized to this thing of ours, this street philosophy. And for the sake of clarity, let me state for the record that one of the sort of cheat codes or code breakers that allow me to implement this is this brilliant quote and adage that goes, "The opposite of one great truth is another great truth." But also, while I'm on the subject of truth, let me caution and warn you not to interpret this quote I just recited to mean that it encompasses this square idiotic nonsense heard and regurgitated as a person having their own individual truth. First and foremost, this idiotic square-ass idea is vintage indoctrination that comes from a reductionist mindset, which is the inability to comprehend complexity. But this idiotic nonsense of individual truth is pushed hard by the status quo, producing the half-witted notion that contorts and tries to equate a complex and abstract concept like the truth to be synonymous to what is felt and honestly expressed and believed. And you know how I feel about having a belief. It is the bottom of the barrel, as in mental maturity one can have. You see, truth is indisputable and unequivocal. Like water will always be fucking wet. But what is felt, regardless of the sincerity, is fleeting and ever changing, like a goddamn signal light. And is the exact reason why this concept of gameology firmly stands on the shoulders of giants. Several ancient wisdom traditions where this type of foolishness, this erroneous notion that there is such a thing as individual truth, have already been G-checked and squashed. And this pearl of wisdom, check out this image I'm now showing, but this pearl of wisdom bodies and decapitates this foolishness notion of a person having their own individual truth. And it does this when it says that truth is infinite, but there is no such thing as an infinity of truths. But I digress. Now, swinging back to this quote and how its essence is one of the foundations of how I transcribe the intellectual elements required to play chess into this streetcraft and discipline. This discipline referred to as the concept called game. Now, the catalyst that provides the means to transcribe what I just got through mentioning is the catalyst known as the power of abstract correspondence. Basically, this is what this quote is communicating. You see, when chess players mentally grapple over a chessboard, they are not just playing chess, they are using one world to learn about another. So doubling back to how this force multiplier that's currently being shown at this moment contributes greatly to a man's success, with the caveat, I must emphasize, only if he has undergone the proper development and made the necessary sacrifices. So skillfully playing the game of chess, and if you were to step back and put that activity up under a microscope, then the ingredient that I just mentioned that kicks this force multiplier into gear is revealed and made obvious. Therefore, to skillfully play chess, delayed gratification must become the breakfast of necessity. This requires a chess player to regulate short-term gains to the kitty corner and the kitty table in favor of long-term victory. In chess, this means developing first your knights and your bishops, and delay and hold back on giving marching orders to your heavy hitters like the queen and your rooks. For a practicing gameologist, this translates into having the attitude of a delayed but not denied mentality, because for a practicing practitioner of this craft, success that is delayed is not success that is denied. Therefore, when a man takes on this type of mental discipline, real quick, dial in on this image that I'm currently showing. This type of attitude and mindset that I just got through describing is a whenever I do this, this happens. And this requires a delayed but not denied mentality, which allows you to choose the right path. That's why when I brought up earlier about a man fully utilizing this force multiplier, I added the stipulation that it will be predicated on the quality of a certain kind of development. And the development I had in mind is the development that all practicing practitioners must participate in, and that is the path of self-knowledge. But hear me now, this path of attaining self-knowledge that all practicing practitioners must travel is not solely for the sake of this infliction and this affliction alone, which is this name it and just claim it bullshit, this prosperity gospel, but this path is a mandatory one in general. I'm just highlighting how the nuance of what a lot of men have become smitten by, in this case this prosperity gospel bullshit, ties back into a greater need and a greater lesson, which is pretty much the case of the tail wagging the damn dog, which symbolizes when a much lesser factor is encroaching upon a larger issue. In this case, the neglect of how a lot of men hasn't started their journey onto the path of self-discovery and having a thorough understanding about the nature of complexities. But let's reshuffle and zero back in on this image, as it is demonstrating the path traveled most frequently and by most is basically where other individuals would just follow the herd, which is a search for a simplistic safety net from the fear of the unknown, because the path of self-knowledge is a path of discovering what's hidden and what is not so plainly obvious, which is only possible if one sincerely tackles the enigma of life's multiple dilemmas. And this brings us to the golden path, the one that is on the right side of this image. But this particular way forward requires an individualized participation. And so this course of action is reserved only for the courageous who seek to escape the circle that have many individuals walking around in zombie mode, as the image on the thumbnail of this episode is clearly depicting. But this circle have a large flock of participants who have fallen and became a casualty to being deceived that this circle is a straight line that will fulfill their wildest wishes. Now, getting back to the brass tacks and the main issue of exactly why a lot of men have become a casualty of this name it and just claim it type of bullshit, this prosperity gospel. But to hammer home the perks and advantages of taking it upon oneself to start one's journey, navigating this golden path depicted here on this image of the savvy gameologist making his way on this path of self-discovery. But this course of action offers two broad categories, which contains a whole host of specialized talents and skills that a man must develop. And these two main specialized categories are the maverick effect, and the other one is the force of personality. But the one pertinent to this conversation this time around is the one to the left, which is the maverick effect. You see, the concept of this maverick effect has to do with a man's individualized psychology, because it emphasizes the development of the why and the how a man would go about forging and crafting his own particular and unique experience. This will provide him the raw seasonedness in order for him to untangle the complexities and the multiple dilemmas of life. Now, zoom in on this brand new image that I have up and showing. Here comes the aha moment that would tie everything together, surrounding why a large percentage of men have bought into this prosperity gospel bullshit hook, line, and sinker, which has everything to do with one's individualized psychology. That ties back into the category underlining the concept of self-knowledge, which is the maverick effect. A man's existence upon this chessboard we call life doesn't operate and function strictly by logic, but in actuality is governed by what is paradoxical, basically what is odd and unusual. Activities upon this chessboard we call life is a tug of war between a man's material comforts and his material agitations, but the referee supervising these two factors is the concept of cost and frills, as the center of this image is demonstrating. And just think of frills as one's benefits. So let me paint this picture for you like this. Let's start off by symbolizing your various goals and ambitions you had in the past or are going after at this moment or in the future with buying a car. So there's a car that piques your interest. This symbolizes your material comforts. If the car is cheap, then it lacks many frills and benefits, which is a referee, remember? But if all the frills and benefits are there, then the car is very costly. This overhead symbolizes your material agitations, which is supervised by the concept of cost, a referee. Therefore, to reduce your costs, also to ease your agitations, you're gonna have to remove some of the frills and benefits, which supervises your material comforts. You see, to properly utilize what gets first dibs on being placed on the back burner versus what gets prioritized as being on the front is predicated on if a man has developed the mental discipline of a delayed but not denied mentality, which enhances the quality of his decision-making capabilities. As you can see, the complexities and the multiple dilemmas of life has a direct correlation to how a man navigates his material comforts and his material agitations. And so, prioritizing as what gets first dibs as to what goes on the back burner versus the front burner is directly tied to enjoying your material comforts and managing your material agitations. So pleasure is a large part of the internal critical thinking mechanism that facilitates the prioritizing of pleasure. And all pleasure leads to prioritizing what gets first dibs as to what will be placed on the back burner versus the front. But to carry this out like a boss, one must first establish the mental discipline of a delayed but not denied mentality. In a final run back of what I have disclosed to you in this episode, where I have shown how this name it and just claim it type of bullshit, this prosperity gospel, can be utilized to stifle a man's common sense. But now it should be plainly obvious that having an all or nothing approach, which is typical nowadays, especially among squares, but a all or nothing approach, which happens primarily when a man hasn't garnered any experience at operating from his own individualized psychology. But an all or nothing approach causes him to mismanage his material comforts and his material agitations, which is incapable of squaring the circle and untangling the many complexities and multiple dilemmas that comes from engaging and carrying out one's everyday business upon this chessboard we call life. And a shiesty female who uses the right type of arm twisting and reward can get a man going in circles like a fucking mindless zombie, which the arm twisting and the reward is symbolic of the referee in the whole picture I painted for you a few moments ago. This episode highlighted the necessity of a man developing the mental discipline of a delayed but not denied mentality, which then equips him the ability to properly prioritize as to what gets first dibs on being placed on the back burner versus what will be placed on the front. And all of this is only possible when an individual chooses to step up and begin their journey on attaining self-knowledge. Because this road of self-knowledge that is not routinely traveled burdens each traveler and practitioner, for the simple fact that this journey is a personal one and a solitary existence at times. And like a seasoned OG told me long time ago, as it concerns the initial stages of self-knowledge, and that is, a practitioner will live as they dream every night deep within the echo chambers of their own unconscious mind, and that is alone. Now that's checkmate. Thanks for watching. We'll definitely catch you on the next episode.